What happens when you shine too brightly in an industry built on control? When your truth threatens to shake the foundations of Hollywood itself? For decades, these LGBTQ+ stars didn't just fight for visibility, they fought for survival. They were blacklisted, sidelined, and in some cases nearly erased from the narrative. Not because they lacked talent, but because they dared to be bold, to be queer, to speak the truth when silence was easier. In this episode, Rainbow Spotlight pulls back the velvet curtain to reveal the untold stories of 5 celebrities who paid a steep price for authenticity. From hidden scandals and whispered smear campaigns to quiet comebacks that roared, these are not the stories Hollywood wants you to remember, but we do. Because behind every fall was a fight, and behind every silence, a spark. Stay until the end. Because these stories might just change the way you see fame, power, and what it really means to be out in Hollywood. Rupert Everett, the gay leading man. Hollywood didn't want. In the late 80s and 90s, Rupert Everett had all the makings of a Hollywood heartthrob: piercing eyes, British charm, and undeniable talent. After his breakout role in Another Country and global attention from My Best Friend's Wedding, Everett was on the brink of A-list stardom. But then, something rare and bold happened. He came out publicly as gay, right at the height of his career. At a time when studios still pushed heterosexual image as a prerequisite for male leads, Rupert's decision was seen not as brave, but as dangerous. He didn't hide his sexuality. He didn't play coy, and Hollywood didn't forgive him for it. While he still landed roles, the offers started to slow. The romantic leads dried up. He was warned, not so subtly, that being openly gay would limit him. In a brutal interview later in life, Rupert confessed that his decision to be honest cost him dearly. "I would have been a huge movie star," he once said, "but I just never made it, and I firmly believe that's because I came out." Unlike many others, Rupert didn't just experience the closet. He experienced what it was like to leave it and then be punished for doing so. It wasn't the press, it wasn't the fans, it was the executives behind the curtain. He later revealed that even in the 2000s, when Brokeback Mountain was being cast, he wasn't even considered. Not because he wasn't talented, but because he was already out. That, he said, made him too gay to play gay. But Rupert Everett is no victim. He reinvented himself on his terms. From writing acclaimed novels and memoirs to performing in bold, provocative stage productions, Rupert carved his own path in the arts. His honesty, wit, and intellect made him not just a star, but a symbol. He didn't fade away. He refused to go quietly. And he's been vocal about the hypocrisy of an industry that celebrates queerness on screen, but punishes it behind the scenes. His story isn't about bitterness, it's about clarity. About what happens when you choose truth over convenience. About the invisible walls still built around fame, masculinity, and sexuality. And for every young gay actor today who gets to live more openly, it's Rupert who helped swing that door open first. Hollywood tried to write him out, but history had other plans. And if Rupert Everett was too out for Hollywood's spotlight, then maybe the spotlight was never big enough to begin with. Drop a "if" Rupert's story made you reflect on how far we've come and how far we still have to go. Jonathan Bennett, from Mean Girls, heartthrob to queer trailblazer Hollywood. Almost forgot back in 2004, Jonathan Bennett made teenage hearts race as Aaron Samuels in the iconic film Mean Girls. With his boy-next-door smile and perfectly tousled hair, he was instantly stamped as Hollywood's next big leading man. The film became a cultural phenomenon, and so did he. But as his fame skyrocketed, so did the pressure to hide who he really was. Jonathan was gay. And in 2004, being out and proud was still seen as a career killer, especially for young male actors in romantic roles. His agents warned him, casting directors ghosted him, and industry whispers grew louder. He's too gay to play straight. The very role that made him a star became a cage. For years, Jonathan stayed silent. He played the game. He took the roles that came his way, often low-budget rom-coms or supporting parts in TV shows. But the momentum Mean Girls had gifted him slowly evaporated. While his co-stars soared, he faded into Hollywood's backseat. What most fans didn't know was that Jonathan was being erased in real time, not because of his talent, but because of who he loved. He wasn't loud, scandalous, or controversial. He simply wasn't marketable enough, according to a system still trapped in heteronormative expectations. Behind the scenes, he was passed over again and again, watching straight peers with half his charisma rise faster and higher. But he didn't give up. In 2017, Jonathan publicly came out and began reclaiming his story on his terms. He leaned into the LGBTQ+ community, hosted inclusive events, and spoke candidly about the pain of being closeted in Hollywood. Then came a turning point. The Holiday Sitter, Hallmark's first ever Christmas movie centered around a gay romance with Jonathan in the lead. It wasn't just a role, it was a statement. He didn't just survive the erasure, he flipped the script. Today, Jonathan is a vocal advocate for LGBTQ+ representation, marriage equality, and self-love. He married his longtime partner James Vaughn in a widely celebrated ceremony that made headlines across entertainment media. It was joyful, it was public, and it was proof that queer love and queer actors deserve center stage. He's become a symbol for the quiet battle so many gay actors face, the invisible pressure to conform, the missed opportunities, the fear that honesty might ruin everything. Jonathan fought back with authenticity, resilience, and a smile that never faded. His career may not have followed the traditional A-list trajectory, but in the story of Hollywood's slow queer awakening, Jonathan Bennett's chapter is essential. Not because he shouted, but because he stayed, and he still shines. Hollywood tried to sideline him, but love and visibility gave him the comeback they never saw coming. Drop a 1 if you think Jonathan Bennett deserved better and is finally getting the spotlight he earned. Ian McKellen, the Shakespearean master who risked it all to be out. Sir Ian McKellen is a legend. He's Magneto. He's Gandalf. He's one of the most celebrated actors of our time. But long before he was casting spells on screen, Ian was casting light on a system that wanted him to stay invisible. Born in 1939, Ian McKellen built his reputation in British theater. With a thunderous voice and razor-sharp presence, he took Shakespeare's most complex characters and brought them roaring to life. But despite his brilliance, he held a secret he kept for nearly 5 decades. Why? Because being openly gay in mid-20th century England meant risking everything. You could be jailed, ostracized, or worse, forgotten. McKellen watched friends lose roles, reputations, and lives. So, like many queer performers of his generation, he stayed silent. That silence followed him into film, into awards ceremonies, into international stardom. Then, in 1988, at the height of his career, Ian McKellen did the unthinkable. On live radio, while debating the UK's Section 28, a law that aimed to silence and shame queer people, he came out. "I am gay," he said calmly and clearly. That single sentence changed everything. Hollywood didn't applaud. He was warned that he might never work again in mainstream cinema. Studio execs worried about market appeal. Casting directors hesitated. There were whispers. Why would anyone want a gay man playing a powerful wizard or a villainous mastermind? But Ian didn't care. He had found his truth and he wasn't giving it up. And that truth became his superpower. Instead of retreating, McKellen doubled down. He used his new platform to fight for LGBTQ+ rights around the world. He co-founded Stonewall UK, one of the most influential LGBTQ+ advocacy groups in Europe. He marched, he lobbied, he mentored. And somewhere along the way, Hollywood started to change. The very industry that once feared him began to embrace him. Not because it suddenly became progressive, but because Ian McKellen was too undeniable to ignore. His performances in The Lord of the Rings, X-Men, and countless stage productions didn't just win awards, They made the world fall in love with a man who had once been told to stay quiet. He redefined what it meant to be a gay man in the public eye. Powerful, dignified, unshakably authentic. And here's the twist. He never hid again. Every red carpet, every interview, every speech, McKellen has proudly spoken about who he is, refusing to let anyone rewrite his narrative. Today, at over 80 years old, he remains one of the loudest voices for LGBTQ+ rights in entertainment. He wasn't erased. He rewrote the script. From being forced into silence to becoming a global icon, Ian McKellen's journey proves that no closet, no matter how gilded, can contain greatness. Drop a 1 if Ian's courage has ever made you feel seen. Anthony Rapp, the whistleblower, who sparked a reckoning. Before Anthony Rapp was a headline, he was a Broadway darling. Best known for originating the role of Mark Cohen in the revolutionary musical Rent, he was one of the rare young stars in the 90s who was openly gay and still landing work. But while he was helping change musical theater history on stage, behind the scenes he was carrying a memory that would eventually rock Hollywood to its core. That memory? A traumatic encounter with Kevin Spacey. In 2017, as the Me Too movement gained momentum, Anthony did something that made him a target and a symbol all at once. He came forward with his story. He revealed that when he was just 14 years old, Spacey, then a rising stage actor in his 20s, had allegedly made a sexual advance toward him during a party. Hollywood flinched. Spacey denied the allegation while simultaneously coming out as gay, a move widely criticized as manipulative and deflective. The media storm was explosive. But amid the noise, one thing became clear. Anthony Rapp had set off a cultural earthquake. He was the first man to openly accuse Spacey, and one of the first gay men to break the silence in the era of Me Too. Instead of being praised for his bravery, Anthony found himself at the center of controversy. He was questioned, attacked online, and quietly distanced by parts of the entertainment industry. The same Hollywood that once applauded him for his work in Rent, Dazed and Confused, and Star Trek. Discovery suddenly became cold. Opportunities slowed. Press requests dwindled. His courage, instead of being universally celebrated, was treated as a PR liability by some. But Anthony didn't back down. He testified. He continued to speak out. He stood by his truth while navigating a brutal legal and public battle that would stretch over years. And through it all, he remained a voice of dignity, choosing clarity over sensationalism and integrity over fear. The truth? Hollywood tried to erase him, not because he wasn't talented, but because he dared to confront one of its own. Because he said the thing no one wanted to hear, and because being both gay and a male survivor of abuse challenged deeply uncomfortable narratives in the industry. But Anthony Rapp never disappeared. He returned to the stage. He released music. He continued to build his legacy, not just as a performer, but as someone who gave other queer survivors permission to speak. Today, Rapp stands not just as an artist, but as a cultural touchstone. Someone who proved that telling the truth, no matter how dangerous, is an act of power. From Broadway brilliance to Hollywood backlash, Anthony Rapp's story isn't just about survival, it's about the courage to hold power accountable. Drop a 1 if Anthony's voice has ever inspired you to speak your truth. Hunter Schafer, the trans star who refused to be boxed in. When Hunter Schafer burst onto the screen as Jules in Euphoria, it was like lightning. Ethereal, raw, and emotionally electric, her performance didn't just support the show's story, it became the heart of it. But behind her meteoric rise is a darker truth. Hollywood wasn't always ready for her. In fact, it tried, quietly and persistently, to limit her. Hunter Schafer's story begins not on a film set, but in the midst of protest. Before she was cast in one of the most talked about TV series of the decade, she was already known as an activist. At just 17, she was challenging North Carolina's House Bill 2, a law that barred transgender people from using bathrooms that aligned with their gender identity. Her voice was sharp, her message clear. Trans people deserve dignity, safety, and visibility. But when she entered Hollywood, those same qualities, her outspokenness, her trans identity, her refusal to be molded, became the very things that casting directors and executives quietly flagged as risky. Behind the scenes, Hunter was often told to tone it down. Some agencies hesitated to sign her. There were whispers that she was too niche, that a trans actress in a leading role would alienate mainstream audiences. She wasn't just facing the challenge of being a newcomer. She was carrying the burden of representing an entire community in an industry terrified of change. Even Euphoria wasn't a sure bet. When she was cast, many in Hollywood viewed it as a gamble. Could a trans actress with no prior acting experience carry such a weighty role? Would audiences accept her? The subtext was clear. Being trans was still considered a liability, but Hunter turned that so-called liability into a revolution. Her portrayal of Jules shattered stereotypes. She wasn't a caricature, a trauma tale, or a supporting afterthought. She was complex, beautiful, flawed, real, and she wasn't asking for space. She was claiming it. Suddenly, the same industry that once doubted her was forced to acknowledge her power. But the road hasn't been smooth. Hunter has faced brutal online transphobia, relentless scrutiny, and the pressure of being a role model when she just wants to be an artist. At times, she's pulled back from public life, choosing mental health over constant exposure. And yet, she continues to rise. Hunter isn't just an actress. She's a fashion icon, a creative force, a trans trailblazer who's redefining what it means to be a young queer celebrity in today's world. She's worked with Prada, walked runways in Paris, and continues to use her platform to speak on gender, identity, and the right to simply exist. The truth, Hollywood didn't want someone like Hunter to thrive, but she did anyway. Not by fitting in, but by standing out, by standing tall, and by refusing to be anything but exactly who she is. From protest signs to prime time, Hunter Schafer's journey is a masterclass in power, presence, and pushing boundaries. Drop a 1 if Hunter's boldness has ever helped you feel more fearless. These 5 stars didn't just face backlash, they faced erasure. But instead of fading into the background, they reclaimed their stories, one role, one headline, one brave moment at a time. Because being LGBTQ+ in Hollywood has never been easy. It means walking red carpets with courage. It means fighting battles behind the scenes that most people will never see. And yet, here they are, still standing, still shining, still making space for those who come next. Their stories remind us that authenticity is power, that silence is not always survival, and that the most dangerous thing you can do in an industry built on image is to live your truth. Drop a if you believe that no one should ever have to choose between being successful and being themselves. And don't forget to subscribe to Rainbow Spotlight for more untold LGBTQ+ stories the world needs to hear.